Hey there, everybody, and welcome back. For those of you that are looking to build your own workflow management or project management tool, regardless of the level of complexity, I'm going to be covering how to make a basic tool in today's video without any coding knowledge whatsoever. We are going to be building a web app, an application that is an exe file that you can save and open sessions, and then one that can just be run in Visual Studio Code. In addition to that, I will be sharing the source code for these three applications on the Codeless Fix website. So before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the channel for new content. Okay, so let's just go ahead and jump straight in. We're going to start off with a demo to show you how it works and make sure it fits your needs. So first up is the executable file. So we'll close Visual Studio Code. We will also basically just minimize everything else. So you'll see we are running the standalone file itself. Now we're going to add a workflow. So we'll add workflow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next up, we're going to click on the first one here to make sure it's selected, and then we're going to add a couple of tasks. Now we'll add this last one, so now we will go to 4, and we have to click a second time to move officially to the second task. Now we're going to add a couple of tasks here, and then we're going to move to 2, and we will add in a single, actually we'll add 2 tasks. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to 5, delete the workflow, then we'll go to 2 and delete that workflow just to show you how everything functions. So here's workflow 1, workflow 3, workflow 4. Now we're going to save session. We're going to save it to the desktop. It'll save it as a JSON file. You'll see it was saved. So now we're going to close this. And then we're going to open up our exe file so we have our little icon right here, and all the files are stored here, and we'll cover how to make this. Again, no coding needed or no coding knowledge needed. But now we're going to open the session, and we're going to find that JSON file, and you'll see when we click 4, 3, 1, all of the information is there. So that's really all that there is to it. So if you have any questions so far, you can drop them in the comment box below. But again, fairly simple application. Now, the Python app is identical. The only difference is it does not save. And then the workflow management tool online works in a very similar way. It does not save, does not look as clean, but you can add your workflows, you can add your tasks, you can delete your tasks, delete your workflows. Very, very simple tool. And you could host this online as well if you felt compelled to do so. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with ChatGPT, which is why we don't need any coding knowledge to build this. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the HTML option first, because that is ironically the harder one to build, primarily because there's so much code and often you'll need to use CSS and JavaScript as well. Now, one thing to note is we do need to be specific, so I like to number out the requirements. So what we will say is write me HTML for a single file application that we'll just say does workflow management. I specify single file because I don't want a CSS file, a JavaScript file, and all this stuff. We're designing this to be as simple as possible. The idea, again, is making sure that this works from the perspective of someone who doesn't know how to do any code. So next up, what we're going to do is we are going to specify what we need. So we'll say, I want this to have a very appealing user interface. I'm always interested to see how that works out. So we're going to specify number 1. So what we want is workflows, and then we want tasks. So what we'll say is we need users to have basic CRUD functionality, which is create, read, update, delete. So we want users to be able to create and delete workflows. Read is kind of understood. And if we can just delete and re-add, so we don't really need to have that. So what we'll say is we'll add it just to be safe. So we'll say the application needs to be able to do the following. And what we will do is we're going to specify the user needs to be able to create, read, update, and delete workflows. And then we need to say 2, The user needs to be able to create, read, update, and delete tasks. The user needs to be able to specify the name of workflows and tasks. And then we need to make sure that we are noting that we need the tasks to be specific to workflows. So we will say for the user needs to be able to select a workflow when adding a task. So the task is only visible when that workflow is selected. And then we'll just do a quick spell check and send it off. Now, depending on the amount of content you're requesting, it's very possible, and I think it's going to happen here, ChatGPT won't finish the entire code. It'll probably stop in the next couple of seconds, so it stops right here. And the idea is we have most of the code, but not quite all. So we're going to put these two side by side, and we're going to copy the code by clicking this button here. We'll paste it into Notepad++, though you can use Notepad if you're interested. And then what we're going to do is we're going to copy this portion, and we will type in, "You did not finish the code." And then I like to specify, please do not resend the entire code. If you don't do this, sometimes you can get literally everything that you just got back. Sometimes it'll include a little bit more. Sometimes it'll get stuck in the same or similar spot, which obviously does not help. So we'll say, please send the finished code starting at, and then we'll paste in where it left off. And then we can just click this button here. Usually you'll get an apology, and you'll see here's the finished code starting from where it left off. So we're just going to double check and make sure it lines up. So update the workflow options in the task form. And then we're going to make sure that this code matches, because you don't want to paste it in right after if it already matches. So we'll see it says document.get element by ID, document get element by ID. So we're looking for workflow select, and you see inner HTML equals. And then what we're going to do is just copy where it starts off here, because this is the leftover code. So this is what would be here. So we will paste this in over top. Make sure that nothing looks like it's in any kind of weird alignment or anything. We will click Save As. Now, if you're going to host this online, you would need to call it index.html or host it in a way that's named where your application or web browser knows how to find it. Index.html would typically be your home page. So in this case, we're just going to call it a bunch of letters.html. And we're going to save it to the desktop. And then we will go to our desktop. You'll see it just appeared. So we will double click it. And it looks like we may have copied a little bit more than I was expecting. So we may have actually copied this part here. So we can delete that. We can click Save and go here and just refresh now that that's gone. So we have a slightly better UI than the first app, which is good. So we're going to name the first workflow. And the first time around, I wasn't specific enough, so create workflow didn't work. We clicked it, and it did work here, but, oh, it actually does have the option to delete, so that's good. So now we're going to create a workflow, and the way that this looks like it's going to work is this option will show the workflows here, which it is not, which is unfortunate. So what we may have to do, let's expand this and just make sure it's not some weird option there. So that part's not working, but we do need to be specific, so let's see if create task is working. So that doesn't work, but create workflows does, which is a really good start. So now we're going to go back to ChatGPT, and we're going to say, create workflow works, but the workflows do not appear in the drop-down. Also, add tasks does not work. And in this case, you should get some kind of an apology for the oversight. Here's the corrected code, and then a bunch of code. So we'll go to this side by side. We'll delete the original code. And if you ever get any big milestones when you're doing this work, I would always recommend saving the code somewhere on your device. So we're going to paste it in here. And then once more, it didn't finish, so we're just going to have to tell it again. So we will go up, since we already have that typed out, and I don't like rework, I will copy this, scroll down, and we're going to paste this in here, and then tell it where it left off. So I'm just going to copy the bottom few lines, and we will click the send option, and you'll see a continuation of the code. And then we just want to make sure, so we see it finished off at delete workflow document get element by ID. So we are going to copy code and pick up where we left off. So we'll paste this in, and we have to see if everything's working as expected. So we will go and click save. We'll refresh our page. So we'll see things moved a little bit. So let's try to create a workflow. So we can still create workflows, so that didn't break. We can still delete them, which is good. So now let's try to add in some workflows. And then when we click here, unfortunately, this is still not working. And create tasks also does not work. So we're going to need to go back to ChatGPT and say, create task does not work. Workflows do not appear in the drop down. And then you'll see here's the corrected code. So sometimes it'll tell you specifically what went wrong, which is kind of nice to understand. But what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and delete all this code. And we know it's not going to finish the text. So we're going to go ahead and grab this, which we know we're going to need. We'll scroll all the way down, click paste. And then we're going to say you did not finish the code. Please finish off here. We'll click send. And now we can go ahead and copy this code and then wait for it to finish the second chunk. And unfortunately, it sent the exact same code. It does this sometimes. And it unfortunately left off at the exact same spot. So we're going to try to be a little bit more specific. And then we will say you did not finish the code. And then let's give it... we can actually just pick here. And we will hit backspace, send that off. And what you want is the apology, because when you get that, that's when you know you're actually getting new code. So you'll see in this case, we have render the task list, and we can double check and make sure this looks like it's the same. And then we will go over here, and then we will paste in the new content. And we are going to click save, refresh. Now we're going to add in a workflow, add in another workflow, and it looks like things are starting to work because we now have a drop-down that's functioning. We can also delete. Actually, it looks like the delete functionality may be gone, so we'll have to see what that looks like in a second. But at the very least, everything is showing up. So let's try adding a task now. So we'll add a task. And then we'll choose a different workflow. So we can still choose different workflows. It doesn't look like the tasks are affiliated, but we are getting a step further. So it looks like there's no delete functionality on the tasks, which is good. Or it's not good, but the tasks are at least there. And we can check on these tasks. I don't know why... there's no association yet, and again, the delete functionality seems to be gone, which is unfortunate, but at the very least, we do have these now. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell ChatGPT let's see, I can now add tasks and workflows, but I can't delete tasks or workflows. And then we're going to get, again, probably 3/4 of the code. So we'll go ahead and grab this, scroll down, and you'll see this is, oh, it's just giving us the completed code for the delete functionality. So this doesn't happen really, really frequently, but sometimes it'll give you this. So in this case, you'll see that it'll say render the task list, update the workflow options. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this, and we're going to see if we can just toss this in down here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, where do I put this code? And then it'll say, should be inserted after the existing code in your HTML file for a single line application. So let's just try to run this as is. Again, we're acting like we have no idea what we're doing. So we're going to try to type in the workflow, create workflow, add task, clicking them deletes them. So it actually does work if you just kind of throw it in wherever, but you can wait for ChatGPT to retype it if you want. So at this point, we have a workflow that works. It creates workflows, and then it allows you to add tasks to specific workflows. So this workflow here, YB, etc., etc. Let's see. So when we're going through, if we delete this, those associated tasks are deleted. The only downside to this is it does not show which tasks are associated with which workflows. So what I will do is I'm going to say, this code works great. Please add in functionality to show what tasks are associated with what workflows. And if this doesn't work, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to work too much more on it. What I'm going to do is I'll save. We're going to add a new page, and I'll actually save this specific code because it's a little bit better. I will save that and then add it to the coded apps section of codelessfix.com. But what we're going to do is we're going to see if adding in this very, very simple request allows it to kind of finish this up and just make it a little bit cleaner. Because again, workflow management is not going to be very helpful if you have a list of tasks and you don't really know what project they're associated with. So it didn't finish the code, which is not really a huge deal. So we're going to scroll down and say you didn't finish the code starting here. And then while it's retyping, I will go ahead and copy the remainder. And we will paste it in, and we'll see we're not actually missing that much. So we're just going to copy here up to create a task, paste it in, file, save. And we're going to save this to our desktop as new1.html. So in this case, we are going to open up a second app just to be safe and see how this works. So we have workflows, tasks, add workflow, add task, workflow, tasks. So I'm not going to say that this is the best, but let's see what happens. So it does look like, and this is the case sometimes, unfortunately, some of the functionality has been broken, which is not ideal, but it is what it is. You can go back through the process and say, hey, everything's broken again. Basically like we did in the beginning of the video. However, in this case, what I'm going to do, because I want to just go ahead and jump into the Python app since we have the basics of this covered, I'm going to save this as a text file. And what we're going to do is we're going to save it to the desktop. And I have my text files set up, which are going to be the ones I'm actually going to be sharing. I'll try to share the actual just code so that you don't have to download random files, but I will try to send that over as well. So we have our basic workflow tool HTML. I'm going to save this and overwrite. And now we're going to jump over to Visual Studio Code. All right, so we have Visual Studio Code on the right, and then we have ChatGPT on the left. Now, Visual Studio Code is one of many IDEs or integrated development environment. It's much easier if you're newer to coding, and even if you're experienced in coding, to better understand. Excuse me. Okay, so we have Visual Studio Code on the right, and on the left we have ChatGPT. Now, Visual Studio Code is one of many IDEs, or integrated development environments. So basically, you can install it, or you can use others if you prefer. But we'll use this one. It's very, very well known. So we're going to go to ChatGPT on the left, and we're going to get started. So we're asking for the exact same thing. So we will say, write me Python code for a workflow management app that has I want to say nice user interface. This application needs to do the following. Now, what we're going to do is we need to specify a couple of things. So I've noticed it's a little bit easier to work through this in Python than it is with HTML, and I'm sure there's plenty of reasons for that. So we're going to start off with saying, let's see, the user needs to be able to type a name in a single text box and click a button to add a workflow with that name. Now, we're going to copy this because we're going to say something very, very similar. And we'll say in a single text box, click a button and add a task with that name. This task, let's see. When adding a task, the user needs to select a workflow to assign the task to. The task should appear under, let's see, only when the associated workflow is selected. Now, we're getting a little bit closer. Now we need to say the user needs to be able to delete any workflow. If a workflow with associated tasks is deleted, the tasks for that workflow only should also be deleted. So this gives us a good place to start. So we're just going to go ahead and click and send this off and see what comes back. Now, while it's typing, in Visual Studio Code, we'll click New File. We'll type in some letters, just random letters, and end it with the extension .py. Now, on this side over here, we have quite a bit of code, so we will go ahead and click Copy Code, paste it in over here, and click this option. You'll see it's Run Python File. I just call it the play button. So we have a very slim interface here, and unfortunately it's very, very difficult to move. So if we expand it, usually sometimes it'll expand and still look the same. Sometimes it'll look a little odd. So we do have a single text box, which is good. So we're going to type in some letters, click Add Workflow. Workflow appears. We can select the workflow. Now we're going to select some letters, click Add Task. Unfortunately, this doesn't appear to do anything. I don't see anything appearing here, so likely that's a simple fix for ChatGPT, but let's at least make sure that we can add multiple workflows. Now we want to make sure we can delete them. And I love that it gives us that message. That is incredible. So this is a really, really good start. And again, we can try to select. Sometimes there's weird behavior when it comes to selecting. But I want to tell ChatGPT, keep all of the existing functionality, but the add task option is not working. So I don't want it to change anything because I really like the fact that it was intuitive enough to add in and say, hey, are you sure you want to delete all of the existing tasks as well? So I'm hoping by saying don't make any changes like that it will allow it to continue or keep that functionality. So we're going to type in some letters and click Add Workflow. So that part did not break. Now we're going to select a workflow, type in, click Add Task. Unfortunately, those tasks are still not appearing. So we're going to try to select this and click it a couple times. Again, sometimes you can have some kind of odd behavior, but that is not working. However, the button is still there. So what we need to do is select a workflow from the task and then click Add Task Button. Now I'm going to say the Add Task button is still not working. And then we will delete everything on the right, wait for it. And it says, sorry for the confusion. So we're just going to see if it finishes everything here. And now we can click Copy and Paste Code, click Run once more. And now we will type in the name for the workflow, add another workflow, click a workflow, type in some letters, click Add Task, which still is not working, unfortunately, and that's a bit irritating because you would have expected that to have been fixed by now. This is 2 or 3 times going back. So now you'll see you enter in the task name in the text box, select the workflow, and click Add Task. So let's see if it's just a different order. So we're going to add a workflow. We're going to type in the name, click the workflow, and click Add Task. So it does not appear to be in order. And we're going to go and say the Add Task option is still not working. And now it's seeing, so it's reviewing the code and realizing it made a mistake in the add task function, which is good. Usually when we see some kind of option there that specifies what was done wrong, that is a sign that we're actually going to get, I guess, what we would call a fix. So let's hit the play button, expand this. We'll type out a workflow, type out another workflow. Now we're going to select one, type in some letters. Now we have a task, so it looks like we're going in the right direction. The task appears when the user clicks away, which is awesome. So now we're going to add in some more letters. And then what we're going to do to make this make more sense, we're going to add in some workflows like this. So now in workflow 1, we're going to add in this task, add in this task, this task. So now when we go through, 4, 3, and 2 have nothing. 1 has all of these. And we can see that basically each one has what it needs to. Now, what we want to do is this workflow here has 4. So I want to see if the delete workflow button, it doesn't do anything because we didn't tell it to as far as I'm concerned. So what we're going to do is just see, does it delete all of the tasks when we delete the workflow? So we still get that dialog. And as far as I can see, those tasks don't exist anywhere else. So we have effectively completely finished this portion of the application. So next up, what we are going to be doing is converting this to an exe file. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this and we will click File, and then we're going to go to Save. So now the next up, what we do is we actually need to create an executable for this. If you want, you can always run it in Python, but the better option obviously would be to create the executable file. Now, I went ahead and asked ChatGPT how to do this just so we have the quick route and basic explanation here. But all you really need to do is install PyInstaller, and you can find the instructions online. We're just going to open up Command Prompt. And then we can right-click on our Python file. And the reason we're doing this is we want to see where it's stored. So in Command Prompt, we're going to type in CD, which stands for Change Directory, and then space, and then you'll type out this location here. Now, sometimes you can copy and paste, and then we'll click Enter, and you'll see now Command Prompt is basically directed towards the desktop. So at this point, we can close this, and now we just need the command once PyInstaller is installed. So what we'll do is we'll paste this in, and you'll see that because we pasted it in, it actually went ahead and hit enter for us, which is not what we wanted to do. So we will, let's just type it in to make it a little bit quicker. So we're going to type in PyInstaller space -- one file, and then the name of our script, which unfortunately I named it this. So SDFS DFDS .py. So what it's basically saying is, hey, make this an executable file. We'll wait for this to finish. And then once it's done, what we can do is close this, and this is basically what we need. So I can go ahead and delete the Python files that we've made so far, and then we can create a new folder. And in this folder, I'm just going to call it, you can call it whatever you need to, but we're just going to call it workflow files. So this is all the files that we technically need, and you'll see you can go into the build and kind of see everything, but this right here in this path is the file that we want. So you can go throw this folder wherever on your computer. When you do, you can copy that file and you can paste the shortcut. So here we have the shortcut to our file. So if you move this folder somewhere else, you'll need to delete the shortcut and remake it just so it's directing to the right area. But now we're going to double click it. And then you'll usually set off your virus software if you have it. And the main reason for that is this is an unidentified file. So what you can do is wait for your antivirus software to actually scan it. Usually it takes a minute or two, and then you'll see good news, it looks safe. So we will minimize this and expand this, and once more we have the fully functional file where we can add in workflows, we can add in tasks, delete workflows, so everything works as expected. Now, the only other thing I want to note is when it comes to the save and open portion, when I originally created that, I just asked ChatGPT to allow users to save and reopen the place where they left off. And there wasn't really much of an issue or difficulty with actually getting that part set up. It basically said, okay, here's the updated version of the code, and it'll allow users to save it as a JSON file, which is actually really good to see because that allows us to work with that later on as well, because that would allow us to pass data through APIs. So it gives you a lot of room to kind of work with this and expand on this application. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you were able to, figure out what you needed to. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment box below. And also, if you have any other video ideas, feel free to drop them in the comment box below, or fill out the form over at codelessfix.com. I'll see you all in the next video.